see.
Thanks, Mickey. So I'll be starting us with just basic introductions in case people didn't watch the first one, and then Daniel's joining us, so we can continue. How about Guillermo, you start since your mic is off, and just introduce yourself, just briefly, and what
What
your
should I
program
say?
is. Your program, your university, and where you are in
Um,
the process.
um, I am, well, my name is Guillermo. I am a first year PhD student at the Political Science Department at Boston University, and I'm currently in Chicago, but I'm going back to Boston in a month.
Sandra, you can go next.
Hi everyone, I'm Xandra. I am currently a fifth year chemistry PhD student at Northwestern. Yeah, that's what I'm doing in chemistry.
Cool. Daniel, you can go.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dan Montañez. I am a fifth year PhD student at Boston University School of Theology, studying theology, ethics, and philosophy. And my hope is to be finishing up my dissertation by the end of this year.
Great, thank you. Kimmery, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kay Marie Tejeda. I am a fourth year PhD student in the School of Religion, in the Religion Department at Boston University. I am right now in Virginia.
Great, thank you, everyone. My name is Alec. I am a graduate from University of Chicago with an MSW or like Master of Arts, Social Work, Social Policy, and Social Administration. They're very specific about it, which is why I'm being specific about it. And yeah, we're gonna try to have this dialogue, this conversation. Remember, everyone, it's not, I'm not, yeah, it's very informal. So feel free to make it like a conversation. You can jump in whenever. And we'll just try to talk about the topic, which is, how to apply and grow and flourish during grad school. And we want to provide, like I said earlier, some concrete examples, information about just how it was for you, how it was for all of us, really, because not everyone has the same experience as you talked about last time. And there's a lot of variety, but there's also a lot of commonalities too. So let's just explore that a little bit. At first, I think it'd be good to just start off from the beginning. Like, what steps did people take to apply to grad school?
I can start.
Mm.
Um, so I guess the first like step technically is like deciding like why you want to go to grad school, if you want to go to grad school, and kind of like deciding, what are your values? Does location matter? Um, is there like a particular program that you're interested in? Um, and I think for myself, I didn't go to grad school immediately from undergrad. I actually worked for 2 years because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I realized that, at least in my line of work, is like in science, you can't become a scientist unless you have a PhD. And so that's kind of like where it started for me. So that's when I started looking into like different programs and what necessarily interested in. I was what necessarily interested me. Yes.
Mhm.
And uh yeah, and then I started to filter, like I said, based on program, based on location, because location was really important to me. um that was like initial steps. I don't know if anyone had a different experience.
Yeah, I'm happy to share next. I mean,
Mhm.
reflecting back on my own story, my own experience, um, grad school was something that wasn't necessarily on my radar, but really something that I feel got opened the door in my undergrad year, my junior year. I was actually I ended up going to seminary for graduate school. However, my original goal was to be a professional trombone player. And to play for the Air Force. I want to join the Air
Awesome.
Force and play and tour the United States. I thought, what could be better than that? So I minored in music, but I did I did a major in business because I figured that was the smart thing to do in case musicians don't get paid much, and I figured I'd have that security net. But God had completely other plans during that time, and really that junior year of my undergraduate career is when I got involved in a local campus ministry, started getting involved in leadership at my church, and began to feel a call to teach young adults and pursue yeah, just pursue some type of theological training. And it was during that time that a door opened up for me to apply to a school up in Boston called Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. My dad had actually gone there to meet with one of the deans, and he told the dean that my son's interested in ministry. Do you have any advice for him? And the dean simply said, send him up here and we'll give him a scholarship. And I was like, that's pretty crazy. I didn't expect that to be something that would happen. But I mean, I think for me, it seemed as though God was opening a door to consider graduate
Hmm.
studies, and I think one of the first steps, that was probably the most helpful step that we took. And I think um, particularly for those who might be discerning to go into some type of theological education or ministry in the future, we actually went up to Boston and we visited the campus itself. Oftentimes, a lot of institutions and universities will kind of set up these visitation days or explore seminary days where you can go there, get a feel of the school, of the institution, see how it feels for you. You probably did something similar when you went from high school to undergrad. You can sit in some classes, meet with professors, and then yeah, just begin to explore and discern if this feels like a particular place in which you can live, in which you can go and find that interest in those programs. So for me, that was a very important part in just my discernment process of going into um, graduate studies.
Hmm.
I can go next.
Yeah,
For
go ahead.
me, okay. So for me, I think it's also like Danielle said, like it was God's plan. I never thought I was going to be able to pursue a PhD. It was not in my radar. Um, Although I always like to study and like to know
Hmm.
things, I'm very curious, always being like that. But when I started doing my MDiv at Harvard Divinity School, I always have like a plan B for everything, and then also a C just in case. So I was thinking like a degree just in ministry won't be useful. What if I had to get another type of job or whatever, or if I get interested, I don't know. I always kind of, although I never thought about PhD, I always thought something in academia or like in a university thing. So probably it was in my unconscious, the PhD thing that I crafted my MDiv in a way that it was half academic, half ministry.
Hmm.
So yes, but my main interest started was with early Christianity because like kind of that was my passion and I kind of what I liked 'cause it was Jesus's time, and I wanted to know more about how like how early Christians used to like practice and those. So that's how I started sparkling that thing. I want to know more about God, and but never formally thought about PhD. And then when I finished my end, like was in the year where COVID hit, so I had to, I was thinking what I'm going to do. I don't have a job. I don't have anything. And then I did like a Master of Sacred Theology, which at BU, which is like it's like an advanced when you have an ended, like then the Sacred Theology is like the second level master that you can do in a year. So throughout the time, I kind of said, let me see if this is a path I can explore. And I crafted, also I had two interests, and which was early Christianity and also Latin American religions. Specifically, I was interested in Pentecostalism and the Holy Spirit. Like my main concern was the Holy Spirit and how early Christians, like in comparison, early Christians with today, like with what were the differences with things we've added, like how in which with cultures have changed it. So that's kind of what my
Hmm.
thought was at the time. So I met good professors in both, like in the early Christianity side and also like in the other side, and but then I received a lot of support from one of the mentors at the time, but he was the professor in the early Christianity side. He kind of encouraged me, and he saw some potential in me, and that's kind of what sparked, like, who makes me make the decision to apply to the program.
Mm. Mhm.
because he was willing to support. And at the same time, I met Doctora de la Rosa, Christian de la Rosa, that we had talked a lot about her because she was the one when I entered, because I met her during that second master that I was doing. So she started a program that year where she was we met every, I don't remember if it was every week or every other week or every month. I don't remember, but she crafted it in a way that we've learned how to apply to this, like to these
Mm.
schools, and she paid for all of our applications. She refunded it. So also that helped a lot because I think I applied to 4 universities. That can be a burden, those some have the waive the fee, some others don't. So, but yes, Doctora La Rosa helped a lot with that and encouraged me to. And then when the professor I mentioned, like he helped me with crafting the application. I mean, I sent it to him as a draft and he suggested changes. Like do this, or you have to decide. He told me at the time I did it because I did it focusing in the two things I was interested in. But he said you have to focus just in one, getting to the program, and then you make a decision while you start studying the coursework. And that was what happened. Like I got into the program and it's been an amazing experience, received a lot of support, and that's what keeps me going. And even in the times where I feel challenged and I decided not to go to the early Christianity side, even when I did the transition to American religious history and the program of religion, it was really, really supportive and made sense to the people around me.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, I think it was planned by God. I don't know like what would be the final destination of in which ways God's gonna use it and everything. But I do can see how I can use everything I have learned so far to minister people or to think about things and about people in a different way and to provide resources.
Mm.
Yeah. So.
Mhm. Thank you, Kimberly. It's really helpful. Um, when I think about myself, it kind of what I've been hearing is you were sort of nudged or pulled in a direction you weren't even thinking about it. I didn't really think I'd go to grad school ever. I studied marketing and I went to nonprofit work. And I realized while working, which is one good thing about not going into grad school right after, college, is I was able to get experience, but also learn that I needed something more. Uh, yeah, and so that took a lot of asking people a lot of questions. I had to do a lot of that. A lot of people were helping me, supporting me. And one thing I would suggest to people is even if you're in college, you can ask professors then to help you, right? And they'll definitely help you, and don't be afraid to do so. But even at work, if you work after, speak to other professionals because people are more than willing to help, more than willing to share their knowledge. Um, that was the first step because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I considered going to seminary. I considered going to law school at one point. Um, I was really just trying to figure out what to do, and I feel like God just was calling me to where I was. He surrounded me with social workers. He surrounded me with people that were interested in the same work I was, and that's really helpful. So it's great to see the threads already coming together, right? Guillermo, what about you?
Um, well, I guess like before coming to academia, I was always interested in academia. Really wanted to be a professor at some point, but I didn't grow up with much, so I needed to go into kind of like in my country. I come from Peru, more profitable career. So I became a lawyer. I have been working as a lawyer for 19 years.
Mm.
Right. And then during the pandemic, I think that it made me revisit the idea of becoming an academic, because I was thinking, okay, it's like next time this happens, who knows, we would make it or not. So rather like try to pursue my dream now. So I discussed it with my bosses and they were cool with it. So they allowed me to first I went to divinity school, and because I wanted to work on religion and politics from a quantitative side, but then I thought like and what I have seen in a scholarship regarding religion and politics before is that not usual complaint because there are not as many people doing religion and politics from a quantitative side, but a thing that something that is discussed from the humanities side on what they see is a flaw from the guys that do political science and sociology is that they usually lack religious studies knowledge. So I decided that then I would do divinity school first and then would attend a PhD to learn the quantitative tools. So that's what I did. Um, but so I kind of probably am the oldest one in this group. I am 41, turning 42 this year. Um, but I think that I would say though that it has some like disadvantages in terms of like, for instance, like most people are in a different life stage than me in my program. But I would also say that because I keep working also as a lawyer, but I only work like some hours a week, and that's enough. So I'm kind of like financially stable, so I don't have like a to be worrying that much about like funding or like sad in terms of the economic situation here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there is, I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily it's an advantage because there is ageism in academia. So that, but thank God, I think that I don't look my age. So that kind of helps until they figure out, oh, but how you did all these things. And I'm like, okay, then we have to discuss my age. But I think that they don't suspect at the very beginning when they meet me that I am that old. So I would say a disadvantage is like ageism in academia, which is gonna make probably more complicated for me to find a job when I graduate. But it's also good to have the certainty that whatever happens is like I still have a job and I could just go back to what I was doing. Wouldn't be my preference. I would probably advocate against becoming a lawyer, but I would prefer like, and that is why I'm pursuing this. Um, but I mean, but it's kind of like it's a good safety net to have if worst comes to worst.
Mm. Thanks, Guillermo. Thank you. Thank you everyone for sharing. It's interesting because I want to hear a little bit more from people about like when they started, but it sounds like people were thinking about multiple different options, multiple different steps of like what could be. At least K Marie and Gitmo, right? They were thinking about like A plan, B plan, C plan. I was also thinking about that too. So if people want to expand on that or share a little bit more, go ahead. About like when you were starting, did you have any other plans or what was going on?
Well, for me, oh, I'm sorry, Sandra, do you want to go? Oh. No, but okay. So yeah, I was just gonna say, like, for example, when I started my NDiv, in the
Mm,
beginning, I thought I was just gonna do ministry. I mean, that was what guided me towards that degree. But then when I started seeing the dynamics of like of the work environment and academia
mm,
and everything and how the job market works, like you never can expect to do just like, I mean, you can have a degree or whatever, but not always. I mean, I don't know. There's so many factors, even like God's plans, that you can think that you're gonna do something
mm-hmm,
happen, like divine ordained, and things change, and you have to adapt. So I never liked to, when I started to see all those things, I said, well, I need to think like what I can do, because honestly, with an MDiv alone, there's not much that you can do. Of course, you gain
mm-hmm,
skills. Uh, I mean, certain skills that I can use, but if it's not ministry related and I don't know, or things that are related to that, like, it's hard to. It's not
mm-hmm,
that you cannot do, but it's like how you market yourself. Because it's true, like we gain some skills that can be transferable, but not many people understand that. So
mm,
that's kind of like
mm-hmm,
that's why I started thinking about, okay, what can I do with this? And then, also because during COVID, when I was about to finish, I was having these interviews in churches that I wanted to do. Because I wasn't born here, I wanted to start the job, like working in churches, but through paid internships that some churches have. And I faced a lot of discrimination in certain churches. The way they phrased, like, I give even like there was one of the interviews, like I was shocked because the questions were not related to nothing about the job. It was like, and I
Mm-hmm.
asked somebody who she had more experience, and she told me that that was a way to deflate the meeting and like to kind of justify why they were not hiring me. Like just it's something psychological, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, that was like what? So then that's why I said I have to take my time and think about what I'm gonna do. And that's when things started to say definitely it was like challenging and not always it's so many variables, as I said. Like it's not just that you have the capacity, that people give you the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. We are fighting like with so much stuff that are out of our control, with racism, ageism, like this, like all
Mm-hmm.
of those things. Like some people think like I'm not educated enough because of my accent, for example, and then some people
Mm-hmm.
just so yes, like it's are like those nuances that make me think about thinking, of how what can I do with the degree
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I was getting.
yeah, that makes sense. Sandra?
No, yeah, Cameron, you touched on a lot of really good points. Like I don't even know if I'd be able to like hit them all because everything you said, like it literally shot another thought and it's just like a tree growing here. But yeah, I think I had some similar experiences. I think my issue is that I also didn't think about grad school. I actually didn't even know grad school was a thing until I undergrad, and then I found out that there was
Mm-hmm.
more. It's like there's more school after this. Um, which like I wasn't upset about because I used to tell people like, oh, if I could get paid to learn, that's what I would do. But I think that I struggled personally with a lot of feelings of like unworthiness. Like I didn't feel like
Mm-hmm.
good enough chemist. I was good enough to be a scientist, and like for me it was more not so much like the accent. I think I'm pretty like assimilated in a lot of ways, but
Mm-hmm.
um there was kind of like when you're younger is what like especially in undergrad, everybody's kind of coming into themselves, and so I'm like more of a like a louder, bigger personality, and they were like, you don't really act like a scientist. Scientists are like quiet and smart, and you're kind of like loud and everywhere. And I was like, oh, like so I definitely didn't think that I was like good enough, I guess, to go to
Mm-hmm.
and um I didn't have like a job. So there was like 2 months where I was just like unemployed after undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, she was like a manager at AutoZone, and she's like, you could just take a job with me. And I was like, no, I need to use my degree. And she was like, you can't even find a job. Eventually I did, thank God. But I think that having a job helped me realize that it's at least in my own head, it's not that big of a deal to go to
Mm-hmm.
it's not like, oh, like your life will change if you go to grad school versus you don't go to grad school. You're a bigger deal if you go to grad school or you don't go to grad school. I think that for me, I realized like, everybody has a different journey. Everybody is coming from different places. And I think that it helped me build my confidence because, I was working at a place where, people were from like, they went from from state schools, UC Berkeley, like there was a mixture of a bunch of different people. And I realized, being from a highly like reputable school doesn't mean that you're a better worker than someone that came.
Mm-hmm.
And so little things like that, where a lot of realities had kind of like hit me that would not have hit me if I had gone straight to grad school. Um, and I think that, something that Kimmery was saying about like being deflated by like just a lot of different factors, I definitely think that I came out of undergrad deflated because I felt like I wasn't good enough compared to like the fellow members around me in the scientific community. Um, and something that you guys were saying that I was like, oh, I didn't experience that was like the community, the support that you had around you. I think that I surrounded myself with a bunch of um just like a Latino Christian community, but I didn't surround myself with scientists because I didn't self-identify as a scientist. And
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what they were up to. And when I needed help with grad school, Google was my helper. Google taught me everything. I asked like a teacher or two, and like they were helpful. sort of like they were mostly helpful, but I hadn't built that community because I didn't think I belonged in that community. And that was just, it was like, it's silly now that I think about it, because
Hmm.
you need to match this certain level of perfection or excellence in order to be considered. But then I saw like a student, she was a year below me, and she was failing like one of the general chemistry classes. But then she went on to go to grad school and she did amazing. And
Hmm.
I was like, wait, but you didn't do well in this like one random class. How are you such a good scientist? And it was just, she knew the skills, she had the community, she considered herself a scientist even though she had been struggling in one of the classes. And it's not like there wasn't SACNAS and other things, but like I said, I
Hmm.
almost like an imposter syndrome where I was like, I'm not worthy to be in this community. I am just a person that does science. But eventually, like I said, just being kind of around a giant group of people that did a bunch of different things, and they came from just several different places, and it was a much calmer, I think, like work environment too. Like people thought about having families, and like not everything was work. And when you go to undergrad, everything is classes, everything is school.
Hmm.
And it just kind of made me realize like I could do this, like I could do this. And um I think that kind of taking a break and doing something that wasn't strictly academic, one, like made me miss academia and learning, but also
Hmm.
confidence to know that I can take something on that I've never taken on and I can do it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where all the thoughts led me.
No, it's great. It's really good. Um, yeah, especially as you're being honest about like the imposter syndrome and the sort of barriers, but I don't know, I felt that myself. I felt like a lot of imposter syndrome, especially when I got to school, because everyone is very articulate, everyone's very intelligent, and they hear something and then they could add a whole paragraph of information and perspectives. So yeah, I resonate with that. I feel that. Anyone else want to provide a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm happy to share as well. Thank you,
Hmm.
Kay Marie and Zandra and Alec for sharing. There's a lot there that resonated with me too. I mean, uh, I think as a person of color, imposter syndrome is something that we're naturally going to face when we
Mm.
come into these institutions, because the reality is that these institutions were not made for us.
Hmm.
When you look at kind of just the ways in which they're structured, the education system, the price points, there's so many things uh, are just institutionally exclusionary to
Hmm.
people of color. So there is this type of struggle in which one needs to go to in order to feel like one belongs. I remember when I was doing my master's program and considering doing PhDs, I remember I went to um, a forum with a couple of the professors from the seminary, and they were two white professors, and they were talking about how to apply for PhD programs. And basically, what they said by the end of it was that if you were not the top three students in your class with a 4.0 GPA, just if you were not perfect, if you were not the image of what they wanted you to be. If you didn't study the things that they wanted you to study, then you were not fit for a PhD program. And very early on for me, I was like, well, none of those things are me. I have a 3.25 GPA, which isn't terrible, but it's like it's not a 4.0.
Same.
And I think existing in those spaces, there was this sense of not feeling like I belonged, kind of moving forward. But it wasn't until I surrounded myself with a community of people who actually spoke life into me. I
Hmm.
think part of my seminary experiences, I began to get involved and connected with a lot of other theological institutions of like-minded Latino pastors and scholars. In particular, three organizations that I think about. The Holy Trinity of Hispanic Theological Education is IETH, the Association for Hispanic Theological Education, HSP, the Hispanic Summer Program, and HTI, the Hispanic Theological Institute. Those three organizations is where I began to connect with mentors who I hold so dearly in my life right now. People like Justo Gonzalez, people like Elizabeth Gonda Frazier, who would say, you need to go do a PhD. because our community needs you. Our community needs you to really use your mind, push yourself. Being in this type of place is a privilege. Really, it is to exist in those higher spaces. And something that was always instilled in me is it was my community who brought me into those spaces. So it's my community who I'm going to serve when I come out of those spaces. Never forgetting where one comes from is something that became central to my own ethic in pursuing theological education. So that gave me the encouragement that I needed to pursue a second master's degree, which was an STM as well at BU. Like Kay Marie shared, I don't think we overlapped at the same time. But after that, I was tired because I had been in school since I was 4 years old, and and part of the reason why I did that extra degree was number one, to get my GPA up. I was able to GPA is something that is important at the end of the day when applying to PhD programs, and I was able to finish with the 3.9, which was helpful by that 1 year degree. And I feel like with that degree, something just clicked in me. Like I was never the best student or the greatest student, but after I had gone through that process, all of a sudden, I just understood the system. I understood how it worked. I understood what people were looking for, and just really learned how to kind of just play that academic educational game, whatever it was,
Mhm.
to know how to work in that system. But I took 2 years off because I was really tired of school, and I just needed to do something else. And that was probably one of the best decisions that I ever made, because it really just gave me the opportunity to do other things, to kind of get some real world experience, to make some major life decisions during that period of my life. And by the time I finished my first year off, I began to get that itch again to go back into school, to go back into the academy. And that second year off from school is when I started to apply to PhD programs,
Mm.
and began to be in conversation with people about what is the best programs to apply for. And yeah, I think that was the best decision that I made. I think each person is different. Some people may need a break between going through programs. Some people can just make it straight through. I'll also say, as somebody who is not on the other side, but nearing the other side of this, I'm 33 now. And as I think and reflect on the last 10 years of my life, when I think of my years of my 20s, a lot of that time was spent pursuing education.
Mm.
And that is something that is good, that is something that is useful, that is something that I have enjoyed. But that is also something that comes with sacrifices. And I think that's something that each and every person needs to measure. As an ethicist, the age-old question we ask ourselves is, what does it mean to live a good life? And while I pursued education as part of seeking to advance my either career or life direction or vocation, it's important to know that there are people who don't pursue that path, and they have just as valuable, good, meaningful life as somebody who did or who didn't. I mean, within our Latino community, something that is extremely important is family. And maybe for some people, being near to one's family, helping them if there's an illness, being present with them in really critical stages of life, that may be more important to that person than moving out of the country or out of the state to pursue a
Mm.
degree. It's something that each and every person needs to discern in community, but also in prayer, and in conversation with God. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it is God who is going to open the doors, and for us to enter in those spaces. And I think that's the wisest thing that we can do. Be sensitive to that call of the Spirit every step of the way.
Dang. Thank you, Daniel. That was great. Thank you, everyone. Wow. A lot of great points, especially raising up the fact that some people, it's okay not to choose it or to put it off or what have you, depending on your situation, what is good for you, what God is asking of you, whether it is to be around family and support someone or whether it is to go into work. Yeah, you don't have to go into school. You don't have to. But it's important to be honest and consider these things. Um, yeah, I was wondering, how was it for people to finally apply logistically to? I'm really wondering about that, especially like for me, I was talking to a friend and we were talking about the negotiation process of like getting the admissions letter and having to negotiate with the different schools, right? And I don't really come from a background. I come from a poor background, and I don't come from a background that really talks about academia or school or negotiating that often. Really, nobody really taught me how to do that. So I had to figure it out myself. I had to read about it. I had to use Google, right? And that experience is just one piece of the puzzle of trying to apply or trying to figure this stuff out too. Because no matter what, even if someone applies and doesn't get it or what have you, you're growing through the process because you're walking through different parts that maybe you haven't been to before, or maybe you're just using different skills, adult skills, responsible skills that you haven't used before, right? Um, so one thing I think about is that, and then also comparing where I want to live. Like this is another thing for I think just being a part of life and being an adult is having to decide where you want to go. Is it because of your family? Do you want to be close to your family? Are you willing to take a risk to move far to forego those relationships with your family and maybe the relationships with the people that you know, the people that you hold close and dear, right? Are you willing to forego that for a time? Um, like for me in social work, because social work is about helping people, it's about serving communities, it's about serving individuals and society. I thought of the place I want to go to school at. I want to be able to learn what does it mean to serve a broader population, right? So I had to take that into consideration. So depending on where we're going, right, we have different uh, boxes on the list that we have to check, and be prayerful about it too. So I was just wondering what people were thinking about in those first processes, in those first steps. I mean, it's a hard question.
I think I'll answer it first because I probably have the least to say about it. Just because in terms of logistics and skills, at least in grad school for like chemistry or the sciences, you have to do a lot of homework. So you have to read about professors, about what they research. You have to decide whether that aligns with your own interests or not. Um, and I was super intimidated about like opening a professor's like website, reading a publication. I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, how am I going to be able to figure out if I like this professor? A big piece of advice for people that are looking for like at schools, they say choose a school where you have at least three professors you're interested in. And so I was like, if I'm applying to like five schools, I have to find 15 professors and I have to read at least three papers from each of. So for me, it felt impossible. And I think one of the skills that I had to learn that I honestly didn't learn well, but now I've like in retrospect, I'm like, you know what, I could have done it. We could have gotten through, but I didn't. Was that you have to just take little by little every day. You know, it's like I'm not going to read three professors, nine papers today. It's like, okay, I'll take one on. I'll try to figure it out. Thank God for like, well, I mean, I don't know if thank God, but like we have AI now, so we can say like, what does this paper mean? You know, whereas before I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I spent like 2 hours on an abstract once, and I was like, I'm never gonna get through this. I don't know what's happening. So I think just learning how to say, okay, like I'm going to do a little bit. If I need to like start, a few months earlier, like I should start a few months earlier. But I think I decided to kind of walk in with a lot less knowledge into grad school. Like I know I want to go. I know I want like like a biology focus. So I'm going to look at interdisciplinary schools. Um, and my like fear of like grad school would have it so that like I didn't even feel worthy to be on like the website. So I would look at the websites and I would scan and then I would exit out because I was just like, what am I doing? I don't even know why I'm looking at this. Like I'm not gonna get into this school. And then I would keep doing that and I would never really learn. Like I never looked at it as like this is an opportunity of somewhere where I don't already have the knowledge. They're going to give me the knowledge. I just need to be willing and show them that I'm willing. I thought more like, I'm not good enough. I don't know these things yet. So why would I go here? Which is not the way you're supposed to look at grad school. Grad school is a place where you're going to go to learn. You shouldn't know exactly what anyone's doing. And if you are, then you're kind of taking a super safe route, if we're being honest. Um, and just also, getting used to rejection, like the idea that like I'm applying to this school and I really want to get in. And for me, location was important. I applied to every potential California school and then one school outside of California. And I was rejected by every California school that I applied to. And I had prayed about it. I was like, Lord, wherever you will have me, send me. And, I got rejected by like my safety schools in California, which are like technically ranked below Northwestern. I was like, you don't want me? Like I was, but it's just, you have to just accept that. Well, like one, it doesn't mean that you're unworthy. And also two, as Christians, we do believe that God has a hand in what is happening in our lives. And if we are submitting to him, he's going to lead us. And so it was hard. It was definitely hard,
Mm-hmm.
but I think at least in terms of like emotional support, I had a dad that was, he's a nerd and he was like, you got to go to school and you can do it. And I was like, I can do it. But it was just kind of this idea of like, you have to learn how to, read what professors are doing, decide if you're interested in it, decide if you can live in that area. Choose at least three, they said. I didn't choose three. I actually only found two here. And I was like, two is good enough. And yeah, and just kind of like trusting God throughout the process. And I don't know how to remove the fear, but now that I'm in my fifth year, I look back at the scared version of me that was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I'm like, it's okay. Like nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody's equally afraid. Some just appear more confident than
Mm-hmm.
others. We're all going to get lost and hit a wall eventually, and we'll all be home
Mm-hmm.
at some point.
Yeah.
But that was kind of my experience.
Can I say something like to add to Sandra? Because it's just to add to, because it's very interesting. Like academia and like humans in general, we try to put everything in categories and in boxes. But things like we should not expect everything be the same way, which is like one of the reasons why now academia is opening doors to people like us, because they figure out that it doesn't make sense when you have such a diverse and a community and also like different ways of knowing. So yeah, when you were talking, I was thinking about that, like about like, you have to read this, you have to read that. But honestly, like in my whole like journey in studying, what has helped a lot to is like showing professors that you care and that you want to learn and that you want to grow. When they see that, like they really like are it. If, well, obviously there's good people, because obviously there's people who are frustrated and like like they hate life, but people who are really genuine, that they kind of want to make a difference in students' lives, they will invest in a student that they see has potential and want to learn and grow. So that's something that I have seen, like that desire of knowing and knowledge that I always had has helped me throughout my journey. Even when I did not know that I had potential, professors saw it, so because that's the thing, like when I didn't believe in myself, I mean, I had a professor who was willing to support me, but also I show interest and I went like to the office hours to ask questions and to know more about the topics and to have conversations, because for example sometimes in the classroom, because my English evolved to time. So in the beginning of my studies, I understood more of reading and write. I could write more, but I couldn't speak that much.
Mm-hmm.
So in class, for example, like I got nervous and anxious, and but then like sometimes to have these conversations, like things that I thought about, and I set up an appointment with the professor, and then we had this
Mm-hmm.
great conversation. So they saw that maybe if I had said something in class that was kind of off, a little bit off, because I got nervous, because anxiety sometimes gets me. When we were in the office hours and whatever, they could like, kind of see that I had critical thinking and ways to see things that they were not thinking about, and that was like kind of how they were interested along the way. But yes, like showing, I like how you said it, Sandra. That like, I mean, if you're willing to do it, like people will support you along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is really true, especially when you're honest and you're vulnerable, right? Like right now, you guys are being vulnerable, and people are learning from it. People are seeing something real in it. At least I am. So that's a really good point. Especially when you don't know these things, it's good to ask. Anyone else want to add anything?
Well, you said a word, and I don't want to take over the conversation, but it's just that you said, like, being afraid of asking questions. In that sense, I never was afraid of asking questions because, like, curiosity, and even if, and also because there's nuances of culture and differences
Hmm.
that, like, like, I cannot don't get still today I don't get certain clue, like certain social things, because it's different culture to me and the
Hmm.
United States. So I had a professor who said, like, there's no stupid questions but stupid answers. So he was putting, like, the professor as, like, the stupid in a sense, because like, acknowledging that the questions are good. So
Hmm.
pride sometimes gets along, like, we don't want people to think that I don't know, right? But, like, that's like when I saw that professors, like, people with these names that like, I saw them, like, in Discovery Channel's documentaries about certain topics, right? And you see that they, like, for me, it was so surprising when I was in a class and one of them said, well, I don't know about that. It's like, for me, I was like, wow, like, in a scholar don't know, because I had that idea, that myth, that scholar know it all. Even if it was not relevant to their field, I thought they had to know it all. So, even that, it was like a modeling type of modeling, like seeing that scholars with those names were so vulnerable to acknowledge they did not know, but willing to seek answers or listen other people. Because I do believe, like, we can learn from anybody. Like, you don't have to have
Hmm.
a PhD to learn from somebody's life experiences. So I like, we in the future will be graduating, have a PhD, but they could be a person who have a life experience that can speak into your heart and give you another way of seeing things. So
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, just thinking about my own kind of experience going through this process, I think one of the most vivid memories that I have in my mind, particularly going from my undergrad to my grad, was the day that I left San Antonio, Texas, to drive up to Boston, Massachusetts. I remember I said bye to my parents. I got into my 2007 Toyota Corolla, and I just drove away home, or I drove away away from home. And that was such a surreal experience because it felt like I was leaving everything behind. And I
Hmm.
was entering into a world that I just did not know. I did not know what was ahead of me. I did not know what was going to happen. Um, and I mean, until this day, I mean, because I took that step of faith, like, I didn't know fully what things were going to look like. There was so much that was unclear. Yet
Hmm.
looking back now, 10, 11 years later, it is clear that God knew what he was doing. And God has opened doors and opportunities. And I've met people through this entire process that I would have never imagined. And life has gone in a particular direction. So, I mean, I'd say in that discernment process, there are certain moments where you are called to take that step of faith.
Hmm.
With my doctoral program, I'd say things were a little bit more technical per se, because I mean, when you're applying to PhD programs, I applied to like 8 different programs and I got accepted into 2 of them. And that in itself is a miracle because I mean, PhD programs are extremely rigorous or difficult to get into. And I think part of that process, what is important to know is that oftentimes it is not you as the person or the candidate as the reason why you didn't get into that PhD program. There are so many
Hmm.
other factors that need to be taken into consideration when going through that process. Sometimes there's not a slot that's open, or maybe there's a professor who's advocating for another person who they're more interested in, or maybe there's somebody, maybe your research interests don't align as much with what's currently at that institution. Uh, there's so many factors that are just beyond your control, and I agree with the comment of being getting used to rejection because that is
Hmm.
something that you're going to experience time and time again. There might be for applying more programs or applying for grants or applying for fellowships, whatever it may be. That's just part of how this process goes. Um, but for me, the two programs that I got accepted to were the two BUs, actually, Boston University and Baylor University. And they were actually in two different programs. I went into studying migration, but I got accepted into an ethics program at BU, Boston University, and a history program at Baylor University. And it was the decision process was more than just which academic field was I more interested in, because the reality is if I went to Baylor, I would have been much closer to home, to San Antonio, and I could have been much more connected. At the same time, I had established myself in Boston for many years. I was in the process of a relationship, which now I am married because I made the decision to stay up here to Boston, in Boston. So there's so many factors to take in consideration. Uh, I would say do not let the discernment process merely be an intellectual pursuit and kind of just try to divorce the humanity from it. The
Hmm.
humanity is very much a part of it, and if you're not careful, then you can become one of those mean professors or one of those people who don't care about other people and they're just interested in themselves and they don't actually invest in the life of students or communities or care
Hmm.
about people and making sure kind of that you're taking care of the whole person, your whole self through this process is imperative.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point, Daniel, especially because we can make it very systematic, especially in academia, right? And we can compartmentalize things kind of like Kimmy was talking about. But there's a whole person here, and we're all led by different things. We all need different things. Yeah, so thank you. Um, that kind of brings me to when you guys are in school, how we've talked about it before a little bit, but how have you been able to continue pushing through it? For myself, I think I may have talked to it in the last panel, but I found Latino students, especially my last year. I was very tired. I spent 3 years doing it. I did an evening program to help pay for everything so I could have a job. Also so that it could widen the load out instead of me having to do like I used to do 12 to 20 clinical hours on top of school and all that stuff. It helped me, stretch things. But I was able to find Latino students, and it was really hard, especially when I was tired and making it through that final stretch. And to be honest, I'm in public policy and advocacy and things like that. And so this is during the Trump administration and the election, all that stuff starting up again. And it was very difficult. I work in immigration specifically for a lot of my social work, and stuff around housing. So it was very, very stressful, very draining. But I found a lot of Latinos, and I found a really great Christian community that I established with Guillermo in my first year, but I was able to continue going forward. They really supported me along with my wife, right? Like there's these different support structures. And what's great about grad school is a lot of people are going through the same thing, as in we're experiencing this together, this mutual search for education and learning and for maybe a better future, but also there's a lot of pain and it can be difficult. It can be lonely at times. Um, so what are some ways that people felt supported during school? Or maybe you don't. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll share. Um, Well, very clearly, I mean, I found community,
Hmm.
which in which one person can be connected to. I remember um, when I started actually my STM, and because I'm in theological education, there are different dynamics at play that are either you're going to a more conservative institution or to a more liberal institution, and depending on, I mean, I'm a Pentecostal, so a place like BU is a bit unfamiliar to the tradition in which I grew up in. But I remember. My one of my former pastors, he was a pastor of a church. His name is Roberto Miranda. He led a church called Congregation Line of Judah, and he told me this story. This old Greek myth. I forget what the man's name was. I think I don't know if it was Onesimus or something like that, but the idea of uh, oftentimes when you go into these spaces, you may hear the sirens call
Hmm.
of kind of these ideas or these different forces or temptations or whatever it may be that are calling upon you in these types of spaces. And it's very easy to be swayed by those things and go in the different in a different direction. And he told the story of how we'll call him Onesimus because I don't actually know what his name is how this man really wanted to hear the sirens call. So what he did is he had his community tie him to the boats, and they had all put things in their ears so that they would not let him escape when that took place. And I mean, I think really what he was saying to me through that analogy is number one, stay grounded in your word in scripture through this process. And number two, stay grounded in your community. It is your community that is going to lead you and sustain you in difficult times, whether it be the struggle of exams or being exposed to ideas that you may not fully agree with. Really remaining connected to the community keeps you grounded and reminds you why you're doing what you're doing. And I said at the beginning, I pursued theological education for God and for my community. Those are my top two priorities. And remaining connected to that. One of the other things that I did is I actually got connected with Graduate Christian Fellowship there at BU with his name's Tim Leary. And for me, it was a place of just like, I just want to go there and read my Bible. Like I'm in theology classes every single day, doing Bible, liberation theology, whatever it may be, all these different political theologies, whatever it may be. I just want to go and read my Bible, like just regularly. Like, let me just read it and just like talk about it with people. And that was really just a space for me to do that in the midst of all of these competing ideas and ideologies, really kind of finding that I guess for me that Pentecostal faith, that simplicity of just letting God speak through Scripture to you in that type of way.
Hmm. Hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Odysseus is what it was. Onesimus Odysseus was his name. Thank you, Sandra.
I think that for me, like the ways I have built community have mostly depended like on intervarsity, probably because I was already adjusted to that in Latin America. Like we have like IFES, which is International Fellowship of Evangelical Students. So it's like worldwide. So the first time that I came to school in the US, which was like 12 years ago to U Chicago Law School, I the first connection I made was like there must be an IFES chapter there. Look for it, send a message, connected with them, and then they actually helped me find a church. They actually helped me find a house to live, and that is how I got into GCF at Chicago. But at that time, we were like probably 7 people total. So it has grown a lot. And the second time, when I came here, is like I probably did the same. I also when my wife came to do a program, also same university, different school. I also told her like because it was during the pandemic that probably she should reach out to GCF. She did, and then she found this friend. Then when I came for divinity school, I just plugged myself in. Uh, so yeah, so I feel like I don't know because I think that many people that are gonna watch this are like probably evangelical or Christian. So maybe a good way to find community usually is that there must be probably a group like of students like IFES, InterVarsity, or another group. um, I would also say that academically speaking, you could also look for, there is this new group of PhD students for those who are PhDs or planning to do PhDs for the Veritas Foundation. So they're trying to like do some like, I don't know, they're trying to create camaraderie among PhD students who are evangelicals in different fields. And actually the meeting for this year is like next week. So I would say that that is another way to do it. And I would say also that I am really grateful to BU because they have this thing called New Body Center, which is for like first generation students. And they include like first generation college or first generation grad school because the school, it seemed to me very wide. My department, but social sciences is for the most part international in every school, so that is more diverse. But generally speaking, it was very wide. And then I was concerned about where I would find community among Latinos because my department also, I'm the only Latino student or professor or like an administrator or a staff or whatever. I'm the only Latino there. So I was like, well, I'm gonna find other Latinos. And thank God, like someone mentioned that they should go to the Newbury Center, and I found some friends there. So I would say also that maybe your schools that you apply to have something like that. And I would say that even before going to that school, I didn't do that. But I would recommend also now that I know that it exists to look if the school that you plan to go to has something like that because I have found that very helpful. Food wise, is like you always have like for is there is always free food there somehow. Then also that there is always people there, and they even have like free therapy for you, be that personal or group sessions. They have a lot of resources. So I was really impressed that something like that exists in a school. And for instance, at U Chicago, I know it does not exist. But I would assume that other schools have it. So I would say that also make that part of your like decision when you apply.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely think about the different resources people need, the community resources. I think U Chicago has a at least for undocumented students, they have something, and then they have a of interfaith organization on campus for students. So you could go there. A lot of my old college used to have one. That's definitely a place to look at, especially if you're under resourced, if you need like housing assistance, things like that. That's a good way of finding those resources because people are there to help you with that stuff. Uh, yeah.
I'll just say one thing too. I agree with everything you guys said. There are definitely a lot of resources where you can find community, especially if you're just like trying to read the Bible and or connect with like, fellow Latinos. I think for myself, I joined the Graduate Christian Fellowship as well, which is actually like a branch off of like InterVarsity. Um, and something that like you had said is that it's like grad school can get very lonely. And my
Hmm.
first year, I can honestly say for several months, I was very lonely. And I was also kind of like going through like I don't know, a spiritual phase, just so I can put
Hmm.
it generally, but I didn't want community. And so I remember going on to like Zoom for the Bible studies because this was like right when the pandemic hit. And I don't know why, but I was like, I'm just kind of here to like read the Bible. I'm not trying to make friends. And it was like a weird thing to say because I didn't have to say it. I could have just, now that I think about it, I didn't have to say it. But I was like, I don't want community. I'm just here to learn about the Bible. And everyone's like, okay. And then ironically, like throughout the whole year, there was kind of this focus on the community of God and how like, God is very like communal. He's not like individualistic. And so then eventually,
Hmm.
okay, maybe I do want community. And then the next year is kind of when the wave of students that came in ended up becoming some of my closest friends. One
Hmm.
who I was like a bridesmaid for, one who I'm going to be a bridesmaid for. And so it just, it doesn't always happen immediately, but it's kind of like if you are seeking God, if you are asking Him, like He will provide. And
Hmm.
I don't know a lot of Latinos in the science community. I can think of one, but I thank God that there was like this person in my lab. I don't have a very supportive lab. I'm just going to throw that out there. But there was one person who kind of took me under her wing and she mentored me and she's become one of my closest friends and she's only a year ahead of me, but she was the one that kind of pulled me along. I always joke that she was just it was like the blind leading the less blind. It
Hmm.
was kind of like she never let me drown, but we were definitely both not like, we weren't on the boat. So it's also just, there will be times of loneliness, but if you are, if you are like asking God and you are like diligent in asking Him and pestering Him, He will give you more than what you would have like what could have like imagined. Because I would say that my friendships that I met through GCF and then that one random Christian student, I also
Hmm.
Christian, which really helped in terms of like our closeness. I'm grateful that she existed because I'm sure that I would not have continued in grad school or in
Hmm.
that lab, especially if not for her. So just
Hmm.
God's provision, you don't know how he's going to do it. But if you are prayerful and you are faithful, he will bring it to, he will bring you something good.
Hmm. Sandra, that reminds me of when in prayer, a lot of times when I felt like God is moving is when I'm my most honest. Whether it's grieving or lamenting or showing my frustration and speaking to God and really, really being honest about how I'm feeling about it. That's when I feel like definitely God is listening the most. Even in that moment when it may feel like, I'm not speaking to anyone or it could be difficult or discouraging. I found that God doesn't move, especially when you're honest and when we're being truthful, even to ourselves, because God always knows what we're feeling, what we're experiencing. But I feel like part of it is being honest with yourself of what you're going through. And it's something that's very common, right? Like I met a lot of students who are feeling very, very lonely, and but we're all feeling lonely, so we go inward. We don't realize that people around us are also feeling lonely, so we don't speak to other people, and that's one thing to think about when in school, just like in life. Like sometimes we're a bit too lonely to see and depressed to see what's going on around us, but people are also experiencing their own pain, and we have to be willing and faithful to speak out and to ask God for for support, for love during those times. So thank you. It's very true. Anything else anyone want to add? Okay. There's one part I want to end on, which is kind of related actually. Um, it sounds like Sandra, like you had that student who was able to guide you and to lead you right and to support you. I know for myself, when I see younger Latino students, I will try to reach out to them and I will try to make friends with them and support them. So I'm wondering how folks imagine us being able to be part of change in our institutions because right, we're in an institution that isn't made for us, like Daniel was saying. Like that is one thing that I talked about in one of my first classes, is that this institution it's not made for us, but we're here. So it's for us now. Right. We have to make that space, we have to make that place. So how do you think or how have you guys been able to make that change in that space? And how has God been using you to be that change in that space for other Latino students or other students of color?
I don't mean to take over, but I'll go quickly and that way everyone can have time to think. Um, so actually, funny enough, I had been praying for an undergrad that would be a female Latina, and I had been praying for her since my second year after I like passed like the candidacy, like the qualifying exam. Um, and I just like, I had like no offense to him, he was fine, he was good. Like a white undergrad, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's fine. And then I had another white undergrad male, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But after that, I was like, I'm done teaching these people. I don't want this. Like, if I'm going to use up my time on someone, like I want it to be a Latina, and I want her to want to learn these things. And you know what, God, like, don't send me anyone if it's not going to be that. And I didn't think it was like an important prayer, I suppose. I just wanted to know that like we could pay it forward. And I don't have like the bandwidth to do more than that, at least like in my present situation. But there ended up being a first year. She's from Brazil. And it's crazy how much our like lives overlap. She took 2 years off of like after undergrad to like work, and now she's here. And she would say things like she would always apologize when I would help her. And I remember I could see aspects of myself in her, and I'm like, don't apologize. We're all doing our job. We're here to help you. Or even, like literally a year ago, I learned with my own projects, like you can look up old publications and see how they did it and adapt it to your own work. It never processed. It never occurred to me. And so she was like not understanding how to do something. And I was like, oh, what do older papers say about like your particular work? And she was like, I never thought to like do that. And I'm like, yeah, it's an important skill to have. And it's just funny to see how like I'm able to kind of like guide this person in a way that I felt like I wasn't guided by anyone other than the girl a year above me. Um, and she has all the same insecurities. She has fallen into all the same like holes, but like not so greatly, because I'm like, oh, like let's take, and she's even taught me things. And so I'm just grateful to God that it's just kind of like, as of right now, I have the bandwidth for maybe one. And God gave me exactly that. And she came during a time where I finally had the confidence to say, I know what I'm doing in the lab. I'm capable. I can complete the work on my own. I don't need help anymore. Um, and then she shows up and it's like, oh, I can show you these things now. And so it's just been it was like an answer to prayer. And like I said, it was a prayer that from like year 2 to like year 4, it like would randomly come up because they kept trying to force us to take mentees and I didn't want to take any. And then eventually I just gave up, and then eventually she showed up. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I can go ahead and share next. I think just reflecting on my own experience, one of the things that I learned is that God doesn't put anything to waste. Like every experience that you've had, everything that you've gone through, God will use in some particular way. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think of my time leading campus ministry when I was in college and getting involved in the youth group as a youth leader. That would inform my calling to teach young adults, which would lead to me becoming a young adult pastor here in the Boston area for 5 years. And really, through that period, I learned what it meant just to walk with people in their present stage of life and
Hmm.
discern God's calling and God's voice through that. And that's really what it was. One day I'd be talking with young adults who's completely lost. I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. Next thing you know, they're getting married or they're got a new job where they're moving somewhere else, and all of a sudden things click. And just being able to be present and walk with people through that journey is a sacred thing. Eventually, I ended up working as an admissions director at the seminary that I formerly went to. And that in itself was another process where I would sit down with people and discern, is God calling you on this particular destination to go to seminary to pursue whatever vocational calling you might have? And I would tell them, if this isn't the place for you, don't come here. If there's another place that works better for you, like that's absolutely fine.
Hmm.
And my goal during that time was to recruit as many Latinos and Latinas as I could on scholarship. That was my mission, working there at that place. And I feel like I did good, and I was able to get a good number of people there. And I mean, I think still just continuing to go through these spaces of PhD programs. Um, I've always been willing and open to talk with people who are just a few steps behind to help discern those next steps. And I'd say right now, I mean, I am always open for anybody who may be listening to this who is discerning that call to pursue theological education or ministry and considering going to seminary. I'm happy to walk with people through that discernment process. So feel free to reach out. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, wherever.
Thank you, Daniel.
Um, I would like to jump in on what Daniel just said. If anyone is thinking about like changing careers, or if your path has not been the usual path, like college, then probably a gap year or two, then going into a PhD, but kind of maybe an unusual path, also feel free to reach out. I mean, I don't know if I would like have actually like a recommendation or advice that you would think like, oh, this is valuable, but at least at least I can help processing feelings, which it took me a while to process. Now I'm fine with those, I guess. Um, but I think that it's good to have another person, another brother, to like talk about how you feel if you are thinking that maybe the path you are in is not the best path for you.
Mm. Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you, Daniel. Mm. I'm thinking one thing I'm thinking about is what like the importance of asking the question that somebody else had prompted of how do we help other people, how do we support other people, and people offering here. I like to highlight, right, we can't do this alone. And one of the reasons we wanted this event, wanted this panel, is to support other people behind us, right? To support one another. Because in fact, like hearing other people's stories, I'm able to connect, and I have a lot of similar experiences with other people of imposter syndrome, being lonely, racism, prejudice, right? But in this, we're able to support one another and show collective care and for one another, and I think that's really important, especially because it's just a very stressful time, and deciding on graduate school and going to graduate school itself is very stressful and very arduous. So I think this is really important, and um, yeah, if other students want to reach out to me, whoever's willing, please do. Um, because we need one another. We need to lean in and support one another. And I think that's the most important thing we could ever do, along with of going to God with these things. And we can go to God with these things together as well, so that we're not alone and facing these huge ambitions or challenges or hurdles alone. Uh, so if people are good, we can end there. Or if anyone wants to offer any one-off advice about school, like one thing, like for me, I would say negotiate with the university. And if you're able to apply to other schools, take your negotiation, what they're offering you at one school and tell the other school. And then if you really want to go to the other one, you could say, oh, now they're giving me this. If anyone wants to offer any advice to end, feel free. And then we'll end.
One thing that I will say, before the words of wisdom get super wise, is, your experiences are not like unique in the sense that if you're feeling some type of way, we probably felt it too. Those feelings of like unworthiness or inadequacy, or fear, all of those, they're there. And, really, I think it took me a really long time to also internalize the idea that, these institutions weren't made for us. And that's why it feels like you don't fit in. It's not because you're inadequate. And I didn't believe it. I was like, no, I can be a neutral, like, tofu human being, and I can get through this. But realizing it's like, no, like the way that I am perceived, the way that I am treated, it's not tofu. Like I am seen as other, I am treated as other, and I didn't want to believe it, but it's true. And so sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it truly is just how you are being perceived, how you are being treated,
Mm,
not alone. And obviously, I'm also throwing out, if anyone is interested in sciences and is seeing this, you can find me, contact me. I would be very happy to talk.
thank you. Tofu, I haven't heard that before. That's good. Tofu. Okay. Guess we'll end there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for being vulnerable. It's beautiful to hear what everyone's saying. Okay.